It's time for This Week in Film History.
Okay, so this time I'm going to be talking about a completely different type of movie. I'm going to be talking about a movie called M, which is about as different as you can get from a second base for a dollar type of a movie. The basic premise behind M is that there's this child killer out. I mean, he's anyways, and you start off being kind of thrown into the panic of the society. The film was in the early 30s. It was a German film, and it was sort of a film that was ripped from the headlines of the times of these sort of murderers that were out there. And you're sort of thrown into the panic or the tension, really, that this society feels, knowing that there's this pedophile murderer out there. And sort of loosely clinging to their families. And what's really dynamic for me, this was Fritz Lang's first talkie. Fritz Lang made a movie that you brought up earlier a month or so ago called Metropolis.
Yes, yeah. That sci-fi.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he was the same guy who made that, and he made this movie called M. And M basically stands for murderer because they mark this guy with an M for murderer when they're trying to follow him. And there's a lot of really interesting dynamics to this film. And the first one I thought I'd talk about is sort of remember I had talked about earlier about how watching movies is just sort of staring at a blank wall for 2 hours, and that's sort of your experience. But what's interesting is you have a connection with that. If you're watching an animation, another way of looking at it is it's digital, so you're just looking at a bunch of ones and zeros for 2 hours, and it makes you cry if it's a Pixar movie. And what's interesting is the relationship that we have with what's going on the screen. And Fritz Lang in this movie does a terrific job of involving you to the point where watching a movie does not feel like a passive experience with this movie. It really feels like an interaction and a relationship that you have with the movie. So in the movie, you like I said, you start off, the tension is set. The community knows that there's this pedophile murderer out there on the loose, and you see this mom who's waiting for her kid to come home, and that kid turns out to be another victim of this murderer. And so you follow the society as it has more of an uproar as they demand that this killer be caught, and then you follow the police as they're desperately trying to find out that they have very few leads to go by. They don't know what to go by, and then you also sort of follow. It's not really a mystery because you know who the killer is, but you sort of follow him as he has his own dilemma. This was early in sort of the Sigmund Freud days of sort of psychology and understanding that someone might have some sort of psychosis, but there's sort of some sort of reasoning behind that, something that has developed out of. And so you sort of follow him and his struggle with this, and he doesn't want to be a pedophile, a child murderer. He's sort of, for whatever reason, compelled to do this. And it's sort of his only relief in life is to get away from whatever demons that he's suffering, is to deal with this. So there's a part of him that even wants to be caught, and he even writes a letter to the police saying, yeah, you should really catch me, but you're not going to do it, because you're just not that competent enough. And the police is incompetent, and their idea of solving this mystery is to go out and raid the slums and the place where the shady people are, and the poverty stricken part, so they're hitting these shady people that if they're committing crimes or minor crimes, not going after this child murder, but they're desperate. They don't know what else to do. You discover later in the film that sort of the underbelly society decides that they want to remedy this because they're still a part of this society too. They might be some of the thieves and crooks in societies, but they still have kids, and they still have, they're still a part of the society. They still want to bring it. So they sort of organize their own
like court system or something, or like
yeah,
judge,
well,
jury,
and they do, yeah.
okay.
But in order to catch the guy, they like organize all of. They're like, well, in order to catch this guy, like we need eyes everywhere, and
so like their own squad or something.
yeah. So
like,
you know, obviously they're not going to put up video cameras. That didn't exist back then, even if they had the means to do it. So they get together this network of like homeless people to like keep their eyes and ears out everywhere in the city. And so,
and report back.
Yeah.
On it. Okay.
And then they do. They, like you said, they do end up having their own sort of judge and jury when they sort of catch up with this guy. But so you have this interesting dynamic of, you know, as far as that goes, you start to ask yourself, what is justice, and who determines what is justice? You know, can there be a situation or a point in which
it's okay.
Yeah, like
there's
there's not an official like there. When we say judge and jury, we think of someone who's appointed by the governor to be a judge, and who's, you know, depending on however you elect your judges, by the people or whatever, you know, in a jury that's a member of our peers. But is that justice? And if that is not justice, is there another form of justice out there? And then you sort of deal with this guy who you sort of follow his neurosis, where he is almost compelled to do these horrific acts because it's all that offers him personal relief from the demons in his own life. So you don't really write him off and want to give him a free ride for this, but you at least want to consider sort of an aspect of it, you know, before you throw your rock at him. You sort of have to. It forces you to deal with this other side of it, which is really interesting. And then the other really big part is this guy. You know, he's a pedophile murderer, and this is 1931, and I saw an interview late in Fritz Lang's life where he discussed this. Pardon me, and he's doing this movie about a child pedophile murderer, which is a horrible, gruesome thing.
Yeah,
as gruesome as it can get. And he said, you know what, he sort of felt like people in the present day in which he gave the interview, which was late 70s, he sort of felt like we were getting to a point in a society where we would almost, you know, that filmmaker would really say, I'm going to show this because I'm going to be that graphic and I'm going to be that controversial and I'm going to be, you know, and he said, number one, you don't want to do that because you're almost an accomplice to the crime when you do that, because you are almost glorifying it when you do that. You know, he said, but instead, you're almost making, when you did it the way he did it, which he didn't show anything. The worst of what he showed was sort of the child had this ball that she was tossing like against a wall, like playfully as a child would do. And then you sort of see that kid, and I think she sort of like loosens grip of the ball, and the ball sort of rolls off, right? But what's interesting to me is you watch the film, and then if you have a discussion with yourself or with someone afterwards, you realize that it never showed you any of the horrible things that this person did to this child, but you have an idea, you have an image in your head of what happened.
Right.
Or at least the crime scene. I certainly had the crime scene in my head. And he said by doing that, you sort of put the audience in the position of being the accomplice and not yourself, where they sort of have to...
They have to envision what's actually happening. It's their imagination.
Right.
You're just showing a kid, and
right.
that's it. You know,
right. Which sort of secludes sort of this ridiculous shock factor that I feel is ridiculous that people go after, and makes a movie, I think, that is more powerful even. And as I was saying earlier about, you know, movies being a passive experience, it makes it a much more active experience for you because you're much more engaged and you're filling in these blanks with your own imagination.
Which I totally agree with. That's the best type of scary movie. We don't see the monster.
Right.
So I could see, I mean, that would make that movie even worse for me than seeing it actually happen, because my imagination would go all over. But yeah, it does make it more engaging.
Yeah, I mean, that was Hitchcock's point. He always said that the imagination is the most scariest thing that possible. So instead of showing the gory monster, he would always give the person the suggestion. That's what made his suspense so amazing. But again, with all these other aspects of justice and stuff like that, it's really a movie that you want to walk away from and have a conversation with. Because if you don't have a conversation with, you're going to lay in bed thinking about this movie.
Right.
And so
And
it
get
really
out.
makes that active. So I'm going to write a blog about this, and I hope you guys all enjoy it. But anyways, yeah, does that? So let me ask you this. I talk about these film histories and stuff from time to time, and I talk about all these different aspects. Having explained this movie to you, is this a movie? Is it? What's your impression? Are you like, I could go watch this movie tonight, or this? I don't want to be that disturbed. I won't have anything to do with this, or what's sort of your?
I initially did not want to watch this movie. I was like, I'm not going to watch a movie about a child. I mean, I've got a kid. I don't want to, watch a movie about,
Right.
This child killer or anything like that.
Right.
But now I'm intrigued because they never show it.
Right.
So I feel like from a filmmaking standpoint, this is probably a pretty decent movie. Like, there's a deeper story there.
Right.
If you don't look at it as being that they're chasing down, there's a deeper psychological story, especially if it's something that he needs to do, like it's something wrong in his head, type of thing. So I actually more intrigued than anything else now, because if you think about it, I've seen worse things on an episode of Criminal Minds or CSI
Right.
than what's going to be in that movie. The principle in that movie is horrific, but I'm sure it's nothing compared to an hour episode on TV of something.
Right. So what would be interesting is for you, if you do watch this movie, what I'd like to hear is, would you rather watch a movie like M that sort of makes you fill in the blanks, or watch a horrific episode of CSI where he shows you the graphic nature of things? Like, which one of those two things is more
Is less
disturbing
to
Yeah.
me? Okay.
That might be
All
interesting.
right. Yeah, is this? I haven't looked. Is this on Netflix or anything to where I could find it easily enough, or have you seen? Where did you see it at?
No, I actually, speaking of cutting cords and stuff like that, the library is a terrific place to get movies. Like,
Okay.
our library even has tons of new releases. Like, for free. You can check it out for free for 7 days, and even renew it if nobody, has it.
Right.
But yeah, they actually had their Criterion collection at my library, and I had to give it back because I can watch. They had so much bonus features, and they had like a commentary on the video with like a film historian, and they had another commentary with like an editor who spoke about the movie in terms of his relationship to it as the editor. And this was actually a part of a course in New York at the New School in New York, and so he would actually pause it and have discussions about it, and then keep going. And so I was like, I can just keep watching this movie over.
He was
and
getting
over.
really in depth with it.
Yeah, and for you and me, another interesting part. This is one of the very first considered sort of the birthing films for the film noir genre. So it sort of has
okay.
that unique angle to it as well.
All right. Well, I will do my best, and if nothing else, I'll just have to go visit the library to watch it and give you my opinion. Yeah.
Oh, hey, you know what? I just looked it up online. You can watch it for free on YouTube in HD.
What?
Yeah.
See, again, man. This
Yeah.
online thing. Anyways, well, thank you very much for bringing that to my attention there, Jeff. And
Yeah.
hopefully the rest of you have enjoyed that also.